Now
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:07 on a Friday morning. Friday Luya to you. This is News Talk 105.9, of course, WMAL, making sense of the news. O'Connor and Company with Mike Opelka. That's me. One more day in for Larry O'Connor. And Patrice Onwuka joining me today. I am having too much fun, Patrice. Too much fun.
Me too. And happy Friday Luya to you.
That's it. Friday Luya to you. Friday, whatever you choose to. Salute the arrival of the weekend. You made it. You worked hard. You survived. You deserve it. It's going to be a great day. So much coming up today. Still to come at the bottom of the hour, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis will join us. And then at 8:05, Congressional Rep Mike Waltz from Florida, who we played a clip from earlier. And I am salivating like Pavlov's dog when someone's ringing the bell for that discussion. I cannot wait for all of this. And I don't have to wait either, because joining us immediately right now, Carrie Lukas from the Independent Women's Forum, the president, is joining us this morning. We're going to talk about freedom, conservatism, and some principles, a statement of principles. Good morning, Madam President.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me on.
We're glad you're here, and I'm sure you know Patrice.
Yeah, of course I know Patrice. Patrice is a very good friend and colleague.
Well, Carrie, it's great to have you on to talk about this statement of principles, the freedom conservatism. You know, I think we get in the nitty-gritty of all the fights and battles on legislation and specific issues, and sometimes we have to take a step back and take a step up and think big picture. You know, what is going on with our movement? And I don't know, I'm sure you would agree. We've seen some disturbing populist or disturbing big government sentiments starting to brew up among conservatives. And you wonder, where is it coming from? But maybe it's the idea that we need to, remind everyone and educate a new generation on what it means to be a conservative. So tell us about these principles and why you had IWF sign on to them.
Yeah, Patrice, you're exactly right. John Hood and Ovik Roy brought some folks together and said, we need to refocus on those ideas that animate the conservative movement and really are the foundations of our country. And that's why when you look at the 10 principles, you will see things like, the core concept of freedom and individual liberty, and this idea that the family and individuals are supposed to make the decisions in their lives. The government needs to be accountable, and we need to be a country of laws, and not men, and have clearly articulated laws so we all know the rules we have to follow. These are really core. It's not just conservative. I feel like they're really American principles, and I do think it's great to kind of remind everybody in this, often tumultuous time when there's, the media is focusing for good reason on a lot of kind of, personalities and infighting, but we really have such a strong core that we rally around, and I think we need to make sure that that's front and center in some of these debates again.
Well, just to, Mike, I know you're ready to jump in, but folks can go to freedomconservatism.org, freedomconservative.org to check out these principles. But go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, Carrie, the idea of freedom having to be sold to people, the idea that prosperity needs to be sold to people, the idea that a pro-family thinking has to be sold to people is just so foreign to me, and yet it is front and center with this campaign, which I think is brilliant, because you've called this Independent Women's Forum. It's not conservative women. It's not Republican women. This is independent women. And I believe we build the bigger tent for conservative thinking when we talk about independent thinking, when we focus on people who are pretty much right in the middle, and they will be the folks who decide this election. So I salute you for getting out in front of everything. We're 480 days away, I think, right now from the next, but who's counting? And
yeah.
I really think it's very smart, very clever to say we're going to target that group, because you've got all the conservatives. You've got the conservatives, but it's the independent women who will make the decision in 2024.
Well, yeah, and I do think I think these core ideas of you're right, independence is not. Sometimes people ask us about with Independent Women's Forum, does that mean it's political independence? And I'm like, no, it's this core concept. This isn't about a partisan thing. This isn't about a party affiliation. This is about this core idea of independence, and that's also what this kind of a rallying cry that Patrice and I signed onto with the Freedom Conservatives is that it's this idea of being independent from government, and then having government. Government was created, especially the federal government was created to play a very small role in our lives, and it's unfortunate that right now it's failing on a lot of those. The limited things it was supposed to do, it's not doing very well. So we need to get back to making sure things like the full faith and credit of the dollar and our currency and our debts. It's crazy that we've avoided a conversation about entitlements for so long, and this incredible burden that we've placed on our economy and our future generations. So hopefully this will refocus us on some of those issues and remind us that the duties that we have, both as a conservative movement but also as a country, to make good on this promise of our kind of core federalist system.
Carrie, one of the principles that struck me is this idea of a nation of laws, not men. And, the growth of the bureaucracy and the growth of unelected officials making federal policy that impacts every American, that are unaccountable to Congress and indirectly unaccountable to voters. And I think this principle is really important. Can you talk to us about some of the ways you've seen the growth of the bureaucratic octopus and how it plays out in our lives and why we need to rein this back in?
Yeah, Patrice, you're absolutely right, and I do think this is one where Americans should be outraged about the way that the federal government has grown to be unaccountable to the people. Obviously, we elect our members of Congress, and they're supposed to be the ones doing the legislating and creating these laws, so we can debate them and kind of vote them up and down. If we don't like what they're doing, we can kick them out of office. But the problem is so much of what happens today is done in places like the halls of the EPA or the Department of Labor. As I know you know too well, the Department of Labor right now is considering regulations that would have so much more power than most legislation. This would effectively, ban independent contracting for millions of people. Make it so that right now independent people who are right now doing independent contracting wouldn't be allowed to anymore. My goodness, that's something that should at least be debated by our elected representatives and not just jammed through as a regulatory matter. But that's what's happening, and we have to say enough of it. And this is, again, it's not partisan. Republicans, when if there's a Republican president, they shouldn't use the executive branch like that. And certainly what's happening today in the Biden administration is an outrage in terms of abuse of power.
We're speaking with the fabulous President Carrie Lukas from the Independent Women's Forum, where you can go to IWF.org and find out more and keep the hope of smaller government, bigger freedom alive. It takes a little bit of work, but they help you understand what it takes to get it done. Carrie, we sure appreciate you spending time with us today, explaining the statement of principles for the freedom conservatism. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thanks so much for having me on.
You guys have a cool group, Patrice.
We do. That's the best boss I've got here. Carrie is fabulous.
Well, Bill Hess is not going to want to hear that out of you this morning, so
well, of course.
We'll have a talk.
Bill is great, too.
Yes, he is. He's fabulous.